Project Management Insights, providing project managers with professional development in the interpersonal skills areas of leadership, team building, and communication. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's podcast episode. Today I want to talk to you about one of the 7 skills of a strong leader, one of the things that I touched on in last week's podcast. And this week I want to talk to you about how to ask questions that elicit a response. First of all, let's look at why ask questions. Asking questions shows that you're open to wanting to learn more about what the team are working on and the issues that they may have. Asking questions also shows that you're interested in how the project is evolving, rather than being caught in your project manager space of believing you may know. And so one of the key things to do is to ask questions that show you're interested. So there are different ways to ask questions. Let's look at the ways to frame your questions so that you show the team member that you really want to understand, and you will also gain valuable information that may allow you to perhaps change your decisions or ideas on how to move the project forward, especially if there's issues. So here's a few of the different ways to do that. Ask what they're working on. Do it in a way that shows interest and is not probing or wanting to know the detail. You could say, "Tell me about what you're working on." It may feel strange to ask this initially, and you're going to gauge from the response of the team member if they think this is too probing for them. And yet, it is a reasonably simple question, and you might be surprised at the response that you get. Ask what their current challenges are. This lets the team member tell you about how things are going for them and the places they're struggling. You could ask this by saying, "How are things going? What challenges have you got with what you're doing at the moment?" This may help you to understand why they're not delivering, and specifically related to the how and when you expected it to be delivered. You might also decide that what you might do is share some of your current challenges. This is a way of engaging even more closely in conversation with your team member. And you may find out that by asking this question, there are bigger difficulties that the team as a whole are having that you're perhaps not aware of. Ask what you can do to make their job easier. This is a simple question, and you may be surprised by the responses that you receive. You could ask this by saying, "What can I do to make your job easier today?" Yes, it sounds like a bit of a dumb question or a dumb thing to ask, and it might be something very simple that they respond with that would make all the difference to them delivering for you. Try it, see what sort of responses you get. Ask how you can help them. Now, this is a little different to what you can do to make their job easier. It shows that you want to help them as much as possible on the road to successful delivery. You could ask, "Is there anything I can do to help you at the moment?" Try different questions at different times, on different days, and see what the responses are. By asking these sorts of questions, you'll begin to build trust with your team members, especially if you can provide what they need. Now, there are different types of questions, and I'm going to assume that you have heard about these different types of questions, open questions and closed questions. And if you're like me, you may not fully understand how each question type works, and how if you change the way you ask the question, your interaction with the other person is going to be different. So let me explain here what happens when you ask a closed question. Closed questions are the questions where there's most likely simply a yes or no answer. And you're likely to experience asking this type of question and receiving the response as conversation stopping. By that I mean, with a yes or no, it doesn't give you anywhere to go. The conversation seems to stop at that point. Now, sometimes these questions are important. especially in situations where you want to understand if something has been completed, for example. And yet, with a yes or no answer, you don't then gain an understanding of the why behind the response you've received. Wouldn't it be great to ask the sort of question that starts a real conversation? These are the open questions. These questions start a conversation that means you are both involved in it. With asking an open question, you're more engaged with your team member or team members, and you may find out things that you weren't aware of. They'll open up and give you information, further information, especially the more that they trust you. With this question, with the question that only elicits only a yes or no response, you gain no further insight or information, whereas with these sorts of questions, you're on an information gathering journey. And the more you ask these sorts of questions, as I explained, the more the team are going to be willing to open up and provide more information rather than less. So take the time to stop a moment before you ask your question to work out what sort of answer you want. From that place, you can then frame your question to get the response that you're looking for. It's much easier to ask one question, one really targeted question, and get the response you were looking for than ask 6 or 7 of the wrong type of questions and still not feel satisfied that you have the answer to your question. Which leads to the point that if you're frustrated when you have a conversation and ask questions, take the time to consider how you are asking. Are your questions open or closed? And try practicing asking a different type of question and see if it helps alleviate your frustration. Now let's talk about the responses you receive. When you first start asking questions, your team members may be wary. They may think you're probing. They may not trust you. This is where it's important that if you ask a question, you really listen to the answer. I'm going to discuss really listening with you in a future episode. But for now, just know that it's that point of being really focused and really present with the person that you're with. And even providing one small thing to make your team member's job easier will have a big impact. You may need to build or rebuild some trust with your team first. Before your team members are open and honest with you in their responses. Your whole attitude and demeanour when asking the question is also key. Be calm and fully present with those other team members. This makes a big difference to the way they perceive you. The team member may associate how present you are with how interested you really are. Remember, perceptions mean a lot. And here's a quote from Peter Drucker that to me says it all. Leaders of the past know how to tell. Leaders of the future know how to ask. So be a leader of the future and ask. See you next week. Thank you for listening to this Project Management Insights podcast. Be sure to visit projectmanagementinsight.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter or to receive updates on upcoming training.